Tony D and Little Joan, and this is a screenwriter's take on Sinners, the Ryan Coogler film. And I'm going to call that up on the IMDb, and we're going to talk about it. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys. Books 1 through 17. Available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. Okay, so first, I'll give you my non-spoiler review, and then the spoilers. So non-spoiler, really good film. It's a little long, I'll say that, but only a little long. The pacing is pretty solid. The characters all have personalities. They all have a purpose, an arc. It gets a little bit from dusk till dawny in some parts. Not quite as fun as that, but interesting rules for the vampires. I feel like the trailer didn't do it justice, quite frankly. And one of the highlights of the movie is the music. The music's really good. I really enjoyed the music. And it had a lot of different kinds of music. The movie, however, is about 20 minutes too long. But fortunately, that 20 minutes is kind of spread out in the movie. Coogler kind of indulges himself in statements on, I'm going to say, the condition of black people in America and relating it to music. But that kind of almost undermines the plot with the vampires to a degree, which I can't really explain until I get into the nitty-gritty details. But you can basically overlook that. I would have loved a cut of this movie that was just a sweet 2 hours. I think it would have been tight as hell. And I think it would have been easily achieved. There's a few characters in it. I just go, what? Why is this character here? And most of the characters, except for a handful of them that don't necessarily even need to be in the movie, are pretty solid. The handful of characters I'm referring to are a little tropey and one-dimensional, but, it's fine. I can get past it because the movie overall is solid. Michael B. Jordan gives a great performance. He plays twins, and they both have very distinct personalities. And they're both, he is rock solid in it. Everybody is. Everyone is. So overall, really good movie. I think if they had cut that 20, probably would have been, I think I would call it a great movie. But you can't have everything. Could it be nominated for an Oscar? Maybe. It gets, some of the details are really good, but then I'm not quite sure why he makes some of the decisions. Again, I got to get into the details. I think it falls short of greatness just a little bit. But, when he's on, he's on. And when he's off, it's not really that long or that off. So, this is by far his best movie, I would say. And I understand why people were seeing this movie and why it had legs. Okay, so that concludes my non-spoiler review. If you want to watch Sinners, I think it's mostly out of the theaters now, but you can catch it on Amazon or Apple TV or any of the streamers for about $20. I felt it was worth the rental. I don't often say that. Okay. Now we break down the movie, get into the nitty and the gritty. So spoilers ahoy. Spoilers ahoy. So, the first act establishes the bookend. So we start with Sammy. Sammy is a young blues player in Mississippi, where the movie is set. and he shows up after the horrible night at his father's church, and his father's trying to get him to give up the guitar and embrace God and the church and all that good stuff. And will Sammy embrace God? So then it cuts to the night before. Michael B. Jordan twins, the Smokestack twins, they're called, Smoke and Stack, are returning to their hometown, and they have been around the world. They fought in a war, which could only be World War I, and then they worked for gangsters in Prohibition in Chicago, which would be Al Capone, I guess. But then later in the movie, we find out they robbed the Italian mafia and the Irish mafia, because they've got truckloads of Italian wine and Irish beer, which apparently is in short supply in Mississippi in 1932. So this is where I pick apart the details. And this is something I could have fixed in the screenplay. He would have been better off setting this during Prohibition, because by the time Prohibition ended, the mafia of every stripe already knew it was ending, and they divested of all their holdings. So that they robbed the mafia of beer and wine in 1932, I mean, I guess they could have robbed them when Prohibition was still on in 1930, but they were rapidly divesting by that time. In fact, the big commission meeting, I believe that was in 29, if I'm remembering correctly, would have been a year before. They would have been already out of the booze business. They would not have cared one whit that they had stolen enough beer and wine to maybe get them through, I don't know, a few months of operating their juke joint in the woods. So it doesn't quite scan. So from a historical standpoint, I would have backed it up probably a good 4 years when the mafia and the Irish were still pretty heavily involved, although the Irish were pushed out by the mafia. So so maybe around 28 would have been a better year. But again, that's a detail I can overlook in this. The implication, though, is that they robbed both mafias and got away with it. Doesn't really scan. Doesn't really scan that they worked for both those mafia. No. They would have... I mean, maybe they could have done some work on the side as associates, but, you know, I think it would have just been better that they just had a lot of money from working for gangsters. It would have kept it a lot simpler, too. But, again, I'm nitpicking. So they're going to open this club. They buy a sawmill from a fat guy, fat white guy, who's so obviously in the KKK, he might as well be wearing the hood. And the brothers even say to him, we don't want your clan buddies up here. If we see him, we're going to kill him. And the guy's like, what? What are you talking about? Like, I mean, that's basically the scene. And, you know, it telegraphs pretty hard what's going to happen in a third act. The entire stuff with the clan was probably completely unnecessary. That was some of the stuff that probably could have been cut out of this movie. It just wasn't needed. I'm not sure why he put it in it. But okay. And I'm not sure what the plan was from the clan's point of view to kill these guys after they just sold them an old sawmill and made a bunch of money off of them. I mean, you know, not for nothing, everybody likes money. And if these guys throw their weight around, and just like everybody else, they'd rather exploit them for the money and get rich rather than, I don't know, just murder people. But again, it's a detail you could probably get past for a movie. So they put together a team, if you will. Sammy is going to be the entertainment, and then they need to get Delta Slim in order to be more entertainment for some reason. So one of the twins goes with Sammy to get him, and the other twin revisits his past, and we meet Annie, his wife. I think it's his wife. I don't know if they said they were married, but they had a child together, and the child died. Very sad. So you get a great sense of her deal, and she's sort of like the local woman who knows all the voodoo secrets and all the magic, and she's doing stuff to help people, and she gave one of the twins a little mojo bag so he'd be protected. So that's all great setup, and the characters are interesting. So I don't mind watching them. I didn't mind the wind up. Even most movies I would have been, oh man, get to the damn vampires. But this I really enjoyed. All the nitty gritty details that Coogler was presenting. Even though he got a couple kind of, I mean, he didn't get them wrong, but I think if he just adjusted them just a little bit, it would have been so sweet. Anyhow, they're setting up the juke joint, and another guy they need is Cornbread to be the doorman. So they go and get him, and then there's a scene where they go to get the food, and they're buying from an Asian grocer, which I just thought was like, that's kind of weird. Why'd they make this guy Asian and his wife just to mix it up? Like, my first thought was like, wouldn't they have gotten from a grocer who was black, right? Because it was a segregated South in 32. Wasn't a tremendous amount of Asian people that way. They would have mostly congregated on the West Coast, so I felt like that was a trope, like a California trope, or even a New York trope, that Asians own the grocery stores. So, I mean, they weren't bad characters or anything, but I just felt like, well, why wouldn't you make them black too? Seemed like an odd choice, but okay. Again, not a detail by itself that means much, but when you stack all these odd choices together, it's kind of like, it just makes it fall short of the greatness. I think if I was writing a screenplay, my first thing to him would have been like, no, make these guys black too. That would make total sense. There we go, black grocers. Everybody in the pipeline for this juke joint should be black, just about, with the one exception of Mary. So then they eventually introduce Mary, right? So Mary is I think she's half black, but she passes as white, and Stack made sure she had a white husband and was well off, but she's still in love with him, and all that. So that's the setup, and it's a great setup. I mean, I like the characters. They all got all this stuff going on. It's all very interesting. You got Sammy's relationship with the pastor, and I'm not even thinking about the vampires. I'm just in all this intrigue and how this is all going to shake out. So then eventually they introduce the vampire, right? So it's an Irish vampire, which again was kind of an odd choice, but okay. And he's running away from a group of Native Americans, I forget the name of the tribe, that are hunting him because they're Native Americans. And there was a thing right at the opening of the movie where they go through the various cultures and their you know, their deal for supernatural creatures, and the Native Americans are mentioned. So I guess, yeah, that harkens back to that. But still, it felt like everybody in this movie gets a moment, but all the white people are bad. They're either vampires or bigots. Um, for most of it, it worked. I just felt like, the vampire could have been from anywhere. Weird that it was Irish. I guess it was the excuse to get Irish music in it, which was good, along with everything else, but it just seemed like, a weird choice. So, the vampire shows up to this house as he's being chased as the sun's coming up, or sun's going down, by the Indians. And he looks past the two people who answer the door with guns, and he sees right there out in the open a Klan hood and a outfit, right? I'm just thinking, like, these guys are mostly secret about this. I mean, they're not super secret. They're not spies. But in general, they don't want it known to total strangers that they're in this group, because they do some nefarious stuff. So I thought that was that felt a little lazy, right? Okay. But it comes back later, so it kind of works. But again, I mean, you would have put that in the background of a different shot. Like, it's almost like the first thing you see with these two new characters. But anyway, the guy pretends, or the vampire pretends, oh, I need help, invite me in, and these guys are going to kill me. But it kind of doesn't make any sense, because he's literally burning from the sun as the sun's coming up. And these two morons just sort of let him in. And of course, he kills them and turns them into vampires. And the Native Americans just leave. I don't know why they just leave. Don't they have any ways to kill vampires at night? I mean, they cornered him. He was weakened. They got weapons. I assume they know something more than just to chase him. But okay. So they just leave. And you never see them again. So now the juke joint opens. And we all know what's going to happen next, right? So the vampires are going to come to the juke joint. And the implication is they're there for Sammy, because Sammy's music is special, and that's going to somehow make the vampires powerful. And it has something to do with community, and some weird community that the vampires kind of making, where everybody's kind of equal. I guess you could say it's a metaphor for, like, communism, but not sure that what he was going for there. But okay, so again, like, it's odd, but it works to enough that it is a vampire movie. Okay, so the juke joint is open. The vampires show up and they try to get in, but they're a little too annoying. And mostly, they don't trust them. They don't trust them because they're white, right? So they say, get lost. And the vampires, I don't know, they go to the edge of a parking lot and play their instruments and just sort of hang out. So then Mary, who passes for white, says, let me go talk to them in case they have money and I could sort of suss them out, and then they can come back, and you guys need the money, because they do the math and the juke joint's not going to make them enough money. Okay, I guess. I mean, there would have been an easier way to do that, that Mary goes out there to talk to these three total strangers. I don't really think that totally works, but it's a way to do it. I think it would have been better if Mary, I don't know, just decided to leave after her confrontation with one of the twins, and they just grabbed her outside and turned her into a vampire. Which is what happens, right? So they turn her into a vampire, and then the movie's starting to kick off with the vampire part of this, and we're really now into Act 2. And it's nighttime. So, of course, Mary goes back in, sort of immediately goes back to Stack and says, oh, let's do it. Gets him in a back room, bites him. This is going on while a fight goes down and other things are happening in the club or whatever. And basically, they shoot her, but she exposes their whole deal and then runs out the front door. Okay, so now we're in a vampire movie. Annie, being the hoodoo woman or whatever she is, tells everybody what to do. But the big thing is that Stack dies, right? And dies in his brother's arms. Tries to save him, but dies. So there you have it. That's a big scene. And, of course, he's going to get up again. But they convince him to lock the body in the room. Like Annie wants to throw the body outside. They convince him instead just to lock him in the room. So they do that. And then they end the party. They got a whole club full of people. They end it. And the Asian guy goes outside to get the car for his wife, and they're going to leave and get back to town because this is getting old. And we all know what happens to him, right? He gets turned into a vampire in like 5 minutes. But nobody knows there's vampires yet. Really, they just know something weird just happened. So it's all sort of cascading. Then, of course, Stack turns into a vampire. Gets to a confrontation, tries to talk his way back into the good graces of his brother and whatever, and he ends up running outside too. I forget if he kills anybody. I think he knocks some guy over and gets him knocked out or whatever. Anyhow, long story short, by kicking everybody out of the club that night, they all get turned into vampires. So now the lead vampire has like dozens of people. They got dozens of them. And it gets down to about half a dozen characters who are trapped in the club, and they're trying to figure out what to do. The vampires, the big thing is the whole you need to be invited in thing, right? That's really big in the movie. Because they go through a whole scene with cornbread, and he tries to get back in, but he needs to be invited. And so they know that the vampires have to be invited in, right? So all they got to do is stay in the club until morning, and, they'll be able to leave. But they don't do that. Now, it's an interesting reason why. Now, before we got into all the vampire stuff, I forgot to mention the one thing, which I think could have been cut from the movie. Coogler tries to do this thing where he ties Sammy's music. It's so awesome that it makes the past, present, and future sort of combine. So you have this scene where Sammy's playing his song, and they're panning around the juke joint, and people from different time periods are dancing around. So you got different black people from different eras, and then at one point you got different Asian people from different eras for some reason. I don't know. It was a little too much, I think, to put in the movie. I think it was unnecessary. It was enough that Sammy's was a unique talent. He had a special gift or whatever. I don't think he really needed this weird montage. Here's all the vampires coming to the place at the end of the movie. There's Delta Slim. It felt gratuitous. And I remember watching the scene going, how much money did they give Ryan Coogler? I mean, it's not a bad scene. It's not unentertaining. It's weird. It's also weird the iconic people they chose. Like, in one scene there's gambling, right? Because they got a gambling room. and it cuts to the roulette table, and there's like two guys. They look like they're from the hood. I guess they're supposed to represent rappers. Standing there like modern day rappers. Like one's got a do-rag, and I don't know. It just didn't. That whole scene was just odd. Didn't work for me. It was taking me out of the moment mostly. I think he really needed to cut that scene. I would have begged him, please cut this scene. It's too much. It also kind of undermines the vampire aspect of all this, because it makes the movie not about vampires. It makes it about, oh no, this isn't about the vampires. They just happen to be there, but this is really about Sammy's amazing music. And I don't know why Sammy's amazing music didn't really save everybody. You know what I mean? Like, if his music's so amazing and could, I don't know, bring people from different times, I guess, then why couldn't it, like, I don't know, kill the vampires if he played well enough or something? I mean, he kind of damages one of the vampires with the guitar, but he doesn't kill him with it. So I'm not exactly sure what he was going for there. I think he got a little too full of himself in that moment. I think that whole sequence probably could have been cut or cut down. I definitely didn't think you needed people from the past, present, and future. I think you could just stick with the characters in the present. But it was weird. It was odd. It was a little like... It was almost like he was formatting it kind of like one of the Bollywood productions where there's a lot of musical numbers. But in this case, the musical numbers really made sense because the vampires wanted the music. They were playing music. I don't know why, the lead vampire, you could say, well, he knew music. I don't know why the first two people he turned into vampires, why they were musical guys too, but you can get past it, I guess. There was a scene in it where he says, oh, now that I've turned these guys into vampires, I have all their knowledge. So, and then that's why he wants Sammy. But if you just wanted Sammy, seems to me you could have just waited until the night was over and, I don't know, killed Sammy and gotten away with it rather than kill everybody in the club, but okay. So the big moment comes in to start the third act, after everybody gets prepped. The wife of the Asian grocer wants to fight the vampires, like toe to toe. But obviously that's suicide. However, she doesn't want to wait until morning because they threatened her daughter, which is excellent motivation for her to do what she does next, which is she invites the vampires in, and then they all come roaring in, and now everybody has to pick up a weapon and try to fight toe-to-toe with the vampires. However, it's pretty suicidal. I mean, she manages to kill her husband, who's now a vampire, and herself, but, like, she gets a bunch of other characters killed. And then it's just chaos, right? So everybody's killing everybody else. Delta Slim sacrifices himself in a weird scene. Didn't quite work for me, but wasn't sure what he was doing. At that point, I guess he just decided to end the movie. And it had gotten a little long. I don't think he needed to do that. But, it was a strategy. And then, so it basically gets to everybody just starts getting killed left and right. And they almost turn to vampires like that. So the big scene is a fight between Sammy and the lead vampire and the twins, right? One's vampire, one's not. So there's a big fight there. And eventually, of course, spoilers. I said there would be spoilers. Sammy and the remaining twin manages to kill the lead vampire. And this causes the other vampires pain. And they all kind of die in the sun. So, which is a little inconsistent with what they kind of push. They sort of push that both the vampires, if you kill the lead one, are independent, but they kind of, by their behavior, they're really not. So it, you kind of can't have it both ways. Are they independent or are they not? Because one of the first thing Smoke suggests, well, maybe if we kill the lead vampire, we can save my brother. Which is kind of like putting a lot together very quickly for a guy in 1932 who has never seen vampires before, but okay, I can accept it. We're late in the movie. We got to move this thing along. But that's a hard no from Annie, who's got all the knowledge. But then she also says, well, so you can kill the lead vampire. It's not going to cure them. They're independent, but they're kind of not. They act like, oh no, I'm in the collective here. So, it kind of works, but it kind of doesn't at the same time, because of what happens next. So eventually, it's also revealed, I forget where, that, oh yeah, his brother, before the big fight breaks out, reveals that the fat white dude who sold him the sawmill is in the KKK, and they know that because the guys they've turned into vampires who were also in the KKK had knowledge of what they planned to do. And what they planned to do was come back and kill everybody after they got the club set up. Again, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. That if they came back and, I don't know, shook down the club, that would make total sense. If you had a corrupt sheriff or something like that, that they were just going to come back with a bunch of trucks and just kill them all. These were two guys who were armed. They were ex-soldiers, and they had no idea how many guys, if they let them get set up, you set them all up in the sawmill after you've taken all the money. One of the things you could do is you could have killed them during the deal when they brought the money. That to me would have made a hell of a lot more sense. That to me is when the trucks full of Klan guys, who, by the way, weren't dressed during the Klan scene, but we'll get to that. I don't think he played that out correctly. But anyhow, everybody's dead except Sammy and Smoke. So Sammy goes back home, and we have the scene where he's got to give up the guitar, but then we also have this new scene with Smoke, and by this time the movie's getting long. See, this is why I think 20 minutes within cutting of this would have helped. So the Klan guys just show up in the middle of the day to kill everybody. I guess it were to kill the two brothers, and they bring trucks loads of guys who are just dressed in their normal clothes. They don't have masks. They're committing a capital murder. This is capital murder in 1932. And but they are out in the middle of nowhere. They'll get away with it, I guess. But for some reason, they bring a lot of guys, and they're going to, I guess, get the two brothers is the plan. But the other brother's a soldier. He's hiding out in the woods, so he just starts picking them off one by one. And eventually, he gets shot, and after he kills everybody. And he's dying. Shoots the last fat, bigoted white guy. And as he's dying, he starts to see Annie, who's also dead by this time, and he had to kill her, which is another big scene. And she predicted that, we'll be waiting for you on the other side. And she's waiting there with their baby. And so the implication is he dies too. Which is a great scene. I think that should have been the focus. Him dying. And he could have died a number of ways. It would have made a hell of a lot more sense and would have been different if the mafia showed up. That would, to me, would have made a lot of sense. Because the mafia would have been like, oh, these guys robbed us? Oh, yeah, we're going to hunt him down. Because you could have said, well, they robbed them of a lot of money. And, you could add the booze. But the focus on that they sold booze and beer, again, was an odd focus. I would have said, no, they stole money. They have some booze and beer from Chicago, whatever. I'm not sure when they stopped working for the mob. I mean, it could have been. How long are they sitting on this beer? How'd they keep it cold? It's 1932. They didn't have a refrigeration truck. I think they may have made them by then, but they didn't have one in the movie. It would have made more sense that they just robbed the mob and the mob is after them, and then they just show up and maybe they're working with the fat, bigoted guys. And you could add 2 or 3 of them too, and the mafia guys pay them, right? And it's a mob thing. It's like, oh yeah, here you go, Cletus. I'm not just trying to work Italians into this, but I'm just saying it would have played out a lot more sensible. Anyhow, so now both Michael B. Jordans are dead, and we cut back to Sammy and Willie give up his music and pursue a life of godly preaching. And it turns out he will pursue a life of music instead. Now that's a little weird, considering what he just saw, right? He just spent this night surviving against evil. Literally what his father told him would happen happened. The devil came for him and came for him and his music. I would have thought it made more sense for his character to go the other way and become a preacher. So, but if you had cut out that bit again with the music through time and like, I don't know. I don't know if this was a slam against religion or not. Maybe it was kind of a little in the subtext of it. But yeah. So he decides to pursue music. He just drives off in the car at the end crying. 60 years later they cut to now. It's 1992. Sammy is a famous old blues musician, and he's playing a gig, and now he's very famous. He still has a big scar from the battle. And then lo and behold, the vampire Michael B. Jordan, Stack, has showed up. His brother spared him, made him promise not to bother him, and Mary is also there, and so they're like a couple vampire and deal, and so they have a scene, and that was kind of cool. I kind of like that scene. At first when I saw it, I was like, really? But then I was like, okay, this could work. And then it kind of opens up maybe for a sequel. You could do something with the 2 vampires if you wanted, but I thought it was kind of cool, that he survived. His brother made him promise whatever. Although it's this odd moment where he sniffs him and is like, "Oh, you don't have much time." Like, all right, weirdo. And that's basically the end of the movie. So, yeah, I mean that's a decent climax. I mean, harkens back. Oh, and he says, I wanted to hear the reel one last time or something like that. So Sammy plays the real blues, and he plays them blues that isn't on an electric guitar. I don't know, maybe if he had focused on Sammy's music specifically and not this sort of like wide berth of like music through the ages. And again, I don't understand why the Asians were throwing. It was weird to throw Asians in there. It was like there's a kabuki, someone in a kabuki mask dancing around during that scene. It's kind of like, what? What are you trying to do, dude? So yeah, just stick with the vampires, I would say, because it was solid. The vampire stuff was all solid. You had the characters playing around with it. At one point, he has to pay a vampire. Or he has to pay Cornbread. They don't know he's a vampire, but he keeps asking to be invited in. And he reaches out to pay him, and then Cornbread grabs his arm, tries to bite him. So that was kind of cool. Although, why doesn't he just throw him the money? At that point, he kind of knew something was up. So most of this movie works. I just think it needed maybe one more pass on the script to fix up these little nitpicky things, which I know when you're watching it, it kind of just blows by you. But those things I really do believe separated from being a very good movie. Again, it's a very good movie, but it could have been like a great movie. It could have been like, I mean, it's one of the highest grossing vampire movies. So there's that. I mean, I think that's in raw numbers. I wouldn't call it the best one, but it's definitely up there. I would put it in my top 10. Yeah, I would put it in the top 10. But you know, there's a few other vampire movies that I would definitely put ahead of it, obviously. But yeah, I mean, the music is a lot of fun too. Probably could have cut back on, maybe cut out one song. It was a little too much music, but you know, I think that was a big selling point of this thing, and I think I'm kind of surprised. I don't think this got a big distribution overseas, but I could see this doing really well overseas. And I could see why they would, you know, why that additional stuff made it. But, again, maybe just cut out the Asian characters, and that would have saved some time. And they could have just, I don't know, set the barn on fire, set the whole sawmill on fire and drive them out. I mean, why wouldn't they? They're vampires. They're pretty destructive. I mean, why not just tear the place down brick by brick or board by board until it collapsed, and then, you know, then it's no longer a building. But so yeah, Sinners is definitely worth watching. It's got a lot of drama. Maybe you even want to cut back on some of the exposition in the beginning, but some of it was really good. I don't know why there was a lot of sexual scenes that probably could have gone. You could have just implied them rather than go as far as you did, but that would have saved you like a couple of minutes. But yeah, here he is as Stack. But yeah, solid movie. Solid. I would give it a solid. Give it an 8.5 out of 10. If I had to give it a number, solid 8.5. Yeah, wouldn't quite reach a 9. That, to me, that's like greatness territory, and it's just shy of that. Really 8.75 when you get right down to it. But good stuff. Good stuff. So, again, Sinners is on, it was Warner Brothers? I wonder if it's on Max. I bet it's going to be on Max soon. Probably should have waited before we blew $20 on it, but I kind of wanted to see it, and I think it is worth seeing. I really do. Well directed, definitely well acted. Oh man, everybody in this hits their mark. No problem whatsoever. So, yeah, check out Sinners when you get a chance. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan, somewhere behind me. Thanks for tuning in today. Thanks to all who came out to the Blueberry Hill Farm event today. That was in Pittsgrove, New Jersey. It was so hot. And speaking of hot, it's going to be blazing hot tomorrow, so I am postponing Lucille's Luncheonette event from tomorrow, Sunday, to next Saturday, assuming we don't get rained out then. I know it's... Unfortunately, bug flew right into my ear. Son of a gun. Unfortunately, it's probably going to rain next week, but tomorrow's going to be so blazing hot. I'd tough it out, but I don't think people will even stand at my table. It's going to be so hot tomorrow. So let's get through the heat wave, and something will come up. So next up from me is going to be... I'm going to do... I got to watch another movie. I'm going to be doing the American Werewolf podcast again on Wednesday. We're going to be looking at the Kurosawa movie Ran, but I got to finish watching it. I'm only about a half hour in. So look for that on Wednesday, and then I'll be at the Bridgeton Library at 5 p.m. on Friday next week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you